Good morning, gentlemen. Welcome to the wooden square table.
The attic.
The attic.
Welcome to the attic.
I like the attic.
Yeah. It's Freestyle Friday.
Freestyle Friday.
Even though you're listening to this
Brad's gonna
on
rap.
a different day.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing this podcast for, I don't know, we're not at 100 yet, are we? We're in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah, I think we're in the 60s.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to come up with specific topics, I'll be honest. But what I love about what we're doing, the three of us, is we all kind of come from similar but different backgrounds. And we always end up finding something to talk about. But today, I guess based on where we are, there's lots of things going on. And I know, Brad, you've talked a lot about, and you're really into the finance market and investing and blockchain and all that
which
good
we've benefited
stuff.
a lot from.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been learning a lot. I even went over to Brad's house with my youngest son, and he gave us both an education.
I overwhelmed him.
You did, but it was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know
what
what
you said, it was like a fire hose.
Last night, my son said, "You know your friend Brad?" He goes, "He was right. I've been learning about NFTs, and they're getting really popular."
There you go.
So there you go.
Yeah. How about my first NFT?
Yeah. So my point is,
For those that don't know, what is an NFT?
It's a non-fungible token.
love that word, fungible.
Yeah. So it's like a digital asset that is on a blockchain and it's yours. If you buy it, it's yours and it's undisputably yours.
And it represents something?
Typically it represents something that's a digital asset. Could be a song, could be a piece of art.
The first tweet was just purchased
Yes.
as an NFT.
Yes, I think it's up at, and it's, so by the way, once you have it and you hold it, now you can resell it and actually make as a investment strategy. So you sell it for more than you bought it for. So let's say a painter or a digital artist or something that's starting to get some traction, you can buy his or her art at a cheap price, and then 2 years later, you sell it.
What's the marketplace for it?
Oh, there's a bunch of marketplaces out there. Just type in Google NFT marketplaces.
What kind of thing did you buy?
Oh,
You don't
I
tell
actually
us
bought
exactly
a domain
what it
name.
was. Okay.
Yeah, I bought some domain names. So there's an organization that actually has the domain .crypto, and then you can buy them, and
I love that.
they put them on the blockchain. And if you want to, normally you have to go through like GoDaddy, and you have to, let's say you have to sell it. I can sell it to you, and you can immediately change all the DNS information and stuff on it, and I can just do it through a wallet. Like Coinbase has actually a wallet specifically for NFTs, and so now I hold it. I can show you after the show here, and if I can list it on some sites if I want to, sell it down the road too. So, but it's on the blockchain.
No, I know. I've been learning a little bit more about it in the recent past, and I think that's such a revolutionary thing.
You got to buy it though with crypto. So you buy it with Ethereum typically, or some other type of altcoin. And I know Gary V's all up about NFTs now. That's his thing. Used to be Amazon Voice. Now it's NFTs.
Yeah.
NFTs. A lot of, and the NFL actually is doing a deal with a big NFT because they want to do playing cards, digital playing cards.
Okay.
And so, if I was a celebrity right now, I'd be looking at anything I possibly could. And man, I would be doing my own. If I wasn't an artist, I saw an NFT that was just a block of red, just red, but it was from somebody who was kind of famous, and and now it's going for way too much money.
Interesting.
But you own it; it's yours, and nobody can take that from you.
But the point is, it's an investment, and you hope it goes up in value, right?
Correct. Or it's something that you want to hold, and something that you don't want you want to prove authenticity.
And and the reason that these are sort of coming about is because, as we were talking about a little earlier, I guess the US dollar and fiat currency is sort of being devalued and devalued. And
Sure.
there's really no place to put your money in assets that actually appreciate other than real estate.
Yes, I was listening to a radio show, and the gentleman, I don't even know what radio show it was. I was just flipping through, but it was a financial advice station, and they said, you've got to have if you can actually make around 2% a year on your money, that's good. And I'm like, that's less than inflation.
Yeah.
Like you're
It's just slow
losing money when you're only making 2% a year. Your money is losing value. And then we can talk about this later, but as we print more money, as the government prints more money, our money becomes less. It still says $1. It's still you can still see it as $1, but what you can buy for that goes down.
Mm.
And it doesn't go down. The funny thing is, I think a lot of people think there's a switch, a dial. It goes down overnight. No, it goes down gradually over time. You don't even realize.
Yes.
Right? Just
unless it does go down overnight, that's called a depression.
Yeah.
Well,
crash.
a crash, but for sure.
But normally, yes.
You're right. But like in these situations, you may not realize you may be thinking, everything's fine, and eventually you're just paying more for stuff.
Yeah. So the question is, how does that impact, our businesses? How does the change in where money goes and flows impacts our business? Because it's going to have a huge impact on us. During the 2008 recession, the first thing that got cut was marketing budgets, right?
During the start of COVID, the first thing I cut was marketing budgets.
People get nervous, so they start cutting out anything that's not operational, that can impact your business.
Obvious. We talked about this at the beginning of COVID, but it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yes,
but it does happen. And I think we were talking earlier, like the goal is to kind of see these things out, so that we can plan for them. And these things will happen.
And that's the reason why Tesla put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. And they're now, just yesterday, came out and tweeted, Elon Musk says, now we are officially accepting Bitcoin in our U.S. locations. The thing that Elon wants is, and it doesn't go into fiat. So Tesla's not changing Bitcoin to U.S. dollars and then holding those U.S. dollars. They're keeping them in Bitcoin, because they want as much Bitcoin as possible.
Yeah.
Because dollars going down, Bitcoin is going up. And there's other digital assets too. It's not just Bitcoin.
It's the valuation of his company.
Correct. And that's the valuation of his company. And that's why all of these organizations, you'll see more in the next 2 to 3 months, that when they do their quarterly reports, they're going to tell you that they now own some crypto on their balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a way that a company can quickly, go up a third or double or triple their worth,
and just not lose their money. Because so if you go and you buy a $60,000 Tesla with Bitcoin, right? You shouldn't do that, because in about 6 months on the road, it'll be worth double, and you could have bought 2 Teslas with the same amount of money. And
the car depreciated double.
Correct. And so Tesla is no longer making $60,000 from you. They're just holding it for a few months and probably making 100.
That gives a whole new definition to lifetime value of a customer.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
So, anyways, those are my little financial anecdotes.
What I love about Brad is he's an investigator and he gets into the details. My brain doesn't even work that way, but my brain always zooms out and looks like 1,000 feet above, and then looks down the road in the future. What's interesting to me about all of this is the different habits that are going to be formed in people that we've never had before. And so for, about 300 years, or since our country was formed, you had printed money, you put it in your wallet, and then we went to slowly a digital format over the last 30, 40 years, where we're like, okay, it's not cash, it's a debit card, and we're comfortable with doing things online and transferring. We never see that cash. Well, now we're entering a new phase where it's a digital wallet, which that's what Bitcoin and the blockchain is. And that now we're seeing, okay, it's not just attached to money, it's attached to other physical things of worth. So you can, like you said, the NFTs, you could buy everything from a song to, somebody's intellectual property to a tweet, on and on it goes. Anything, almost anything. And I think people will get into the habit of, okay, my digital wallet I use for things beyond just financial exchanges. Can we put a value on my privacy?
Sure.
Okay, you can have, I can, exchange my 9 to 4:30 time every day to Facebook or to Apple or whatever it may be.
You lease out
I can lease
data.
that out. Or I was like, I don't want to be bothered this time period, so I'm going to use my digital wallet to not allow people to have that lease on my time. And I think more and more we'll start moving toward that.
Yeah.
And I think it affects us in many ways as marketers to be thinking that far ahead and be like, okay, I can't, do things the way I used to do it, and I need to be thinking about creative ways to reach
I think in the next
harder.
couple of years, this is all going to blow up a little bit further. Some of the things we talked about before we started the podcast is, if you look at like, you've all seen deep fake videos, right? Where it's just really hard to distinguish whether or not it's real or not. And, we've all experienced over the political season, all the fake news. Is it real? Is it rot real? And so what's going to take place in the future is that all the videos will actually go up. So if you're original creator of a video, it will actually go on the blockchain and say, this is the original one. And all of the rest of them then will, if you edit the video, it will automatically, like YouTube, I'm sure in the future, will say, nope, this is not real. Here's the real one. Here's the blockchain hash. Go check it out. If for yourself, it's undisputable that it's not real. And so hopefully it'll be something that will be trusted by people, because we do need that trust. And it's, it's going to affect our business as well, because every time you load up a video, you might, it's no longer is it, they already do that with music and stuff like that with copyright protection, where it reads the waveform and says, oh, no, wait, this is a song that actually exists. And, you can't use it. It's going to be to the next level.
There's a little bit of digital history as me, the archivist. Did you know Pandora was the one that invented and came up with that whole algorithm of recognizing songs?
Really?
Yeah, it goes back to the
Music Genome Project?
Yes, the Music Genome Project. That's exactly it.
That's right.
And that started back late 90s. And I think that's an interesting parallel, what you just mentioned, is to go back and look at the Music Genome Project and say, on a very micro level, I think the Music Genome Project changed the way that we interact with music, how music algorithms are created, et cetera.
Well, obviously we're here in Nashville and Franklin, and I think the stat is something like 90% of the songs you hear is written in Nashville, so it's Music City, and music, I would say, debatably, is one of the most impacted industries when it comes to things going digital, right? And the music industry has fought that, or struggled with that for some time, still hasn't really figured it out. But it's kind of like undisputable that before things went digital, musicians, record labels had an easier time at monetizing music, right? Because there were physical copies. Copyright protection was easier to enforce. I remember back in the day, you couldn't copy a disc, right? But as soon as it went digital, there was really no way to say, to kind of enforce any of that stuff, or even say this is the original. A copy is as good as the original, even though it's not, quality wise. It seems like it is.
It's a problem with MP3s and why MP3s kind of went away. I mean, obviously MP3s still exist, but there's not a huge market for songs via MP3 in the public domain like it used to be.
Yeah, and I think that industries like that embracing this kind of shift, I think have a lot of upside, and obviously us too. We're in the digital space. I think there's a lot that people haven't thought of yet that we can use to leverage this in a really good way. But I just think that it's important, whether or not, I know we're all over the place with technologies, but I think it's interesting that these financial things and these new technologies are so tightly tied together.
Yes,
and that they affect so many other things. And I think as any business
follow
owner,
the money.
You got right.
That's right.
As any business owner, you have to understand this stuff so that you can figure out, that you can best prepare for the future. Like we talked about before, like when we were in COVID, like how do you best prepare for if when this happens again, because some sort of cycle will happen again, right? When this type of economic thing happens again, how can you make sure that you're prepared for it? And I think now we're in a time where things are kind of booming again. But I think you can see with Facebook changes and some of these things how cycles are going to happen again. And how can you prepare for it now? And I think understanding some of these things is really important, and understanding how to use your company's assets and make sure that your dollar is worth as much as it can be worth.
Correct.
Are really important things. And some business owners, I think the reason I'm saying this is I think sometimes, you're in an area of expertise, and as a leader or an owner, it's hard to legitimize putting your time, to learning whatever, how to an investment strategy or the latest, latest investment technology.
There is a shift going on right now, and you can see it in almost every industry. And the only way I can paint the picture in a very short way is to say there's something going on where people are wanting back control of their lives and their selves. So let me give you a couple examples.
I don't think you even need to give an example. I agree.
Right. Well, for instance, right, people are wanting to get out of the dollar because somebody else is controlling that dollar.
Right.
Apple is doing this, right? They're starting to put limits on trackability because they know that people want their privacy, right? And so it's this idea that I want my privacy. I don't want some other big institution or the central banks telling me what my dollar's worth or what my money should be worth. And it's really control. And so people want their control back. And so all these things that are being developed are actually being developed to offer us personal control, right? And so we all have personal control of our business as well, right? That's the one thing in business, when you don't feel like you have any control, then you're out of control. And that's the worst feeling as a business owner.
Right.
So it's very similar. So how do you get in control when the rest of the world is trying to control what your dollar's worth, right?
And why do people
your
want
Facebook
control?
ads?
Right. I mean, I completely agree, and I think you're seeing, I've actually been thinking the same thing, and I've been seeing it in other places. For instance, in e-commerce, it's been a trend to use platforms like Shopify and those kind of things. And I think that's still a trend. That's not stopping necessarily, but I do think we're going to start to see a shift where it's like, just like all these other areas, this is kind of lagging, but I think you're going to start to see a shift where it's like businesses are like, whoa, one of my biggest revenue generators is owned by somebody else, and I'm subject to them shutting me down or doing all these different things that because I've relinquished that control. And I wonder, I mean, it's clear why that is, right? We've lost trust in the people that are controlling this stuff.
Sure. Greed.
And whether it's unintentional or not, I don't know, but Facebook being able to shut your account off overnight or whatever, or any number of platforms. I think when we see other people, even public people, getting shut out of something, and not having any recourse, we may agree with that or whatever, but at the end of the day, I think internally you're staying. You got to ask the question, like, that could happen to me.
It did happen to me.
Yeah. It's happened to all of us at one time.
I think so.
I don't even mean Facebook accounts. I mean, whether you're banned from a platform or, and as we know, there's a really challenging line in enforcing stuff in those areas. And I think that, these social media networks didn't realize what they were getting into in a lot of ways. And I think it's really challenging, but ultimately I do think as a population, we're losing trust, and that's kind of a challenge. That's an unfortunate thing. I think something that, as it trends that way, has other repercussions too.
And I also think that this trend that we're seeing of technology that's being developed for personal protection, like the blockchain and things, I think it's part of the entry into AI and into our AI life, which is going to, in 50 years from now, everything's going to be way more automated, and so these are just initial steps right now. We don't even know it. It's kind of like there, but we're seeing some of those things come to life. I mean, machine learning, right, and algorithms are just part of the AI framework, and so we're seeing that stuff right now, and this is the beginnings of it. And
I think there's two things that this is what we're talking about is privacy and accuracy. Right? Privacy and truthfulness.
Yes.
Those are the two big commodities going forward, and it ties into everything. And whether it's blockchain, which is a good chance it is, or something similar to some sort of cryptography, it's accuracy and privacy. And you could substitute accuracy for truthfulness. And I think that's how everything moves forward, because once that is fixed and everyone agrees on those things, the fix for those two things, then you're right. Then everything changes. Like, that's a game changer, because the only reason we don't have an AI world where robots run everything is because nobody is totally secure with their privacy issues and what's true, what's accurate, what's coming through. And we've learned that the past year in a mega way, like can't trust anything. Who says what? Deep fake, news, media, everybody. Like we're conditioned to not trust it and to question it. When we fix that and we fix our privacy issues, then what's a different world we live in. And I think to me, that's where I'm looking. Agency life, marketers, good communicators. What is that world going to look like, and how is it going to evolve and change what I do now? Because I think you said this, Ken, our last episode. We've gotten really, really lazy as marketers, really lazy. Because now we can just go in and know how to manipulate data, push some buttons, and hey, we're great marketers and we get you great returns. Well, that's going to change.
The algorithm's a great marketer.
Yeah, that's all going to change with what we just talked about. You're not going to have access to know as easily what someone ate for breakfast or where they shop, or that. If that goes away, then it comes full circle. You better be a really good storyteller, right. Create really good creative, and understand the psychology of humans.
You said privacy and accuracy, and I would say one of the industries that is challenged the most by that would be the marketing industry.
Yes.
Right? You rely on data, right now anyway. You rely on data, which is kind of anti-private, to do things like say, hey, I know you saw this product on my website 2 hours ago while you were eating breakfast. And you can do all these things that are really creepy. And accuracy and trust, which, I think marketers tend to leverage, stretch the truth to get people to move, right? Urgency and scarcity and
fear,
fear and
fear of missing out, FOMO,
all kind of negative things. And
play on people's self-esteem.
Yeah, yes. And so what you're saying is, and I not that I've been noticing that as well. I actually wrote an article on our website about it called something like anti-anxiety marketing or something like that. But I don't know. I think most people would say, well, this is not as effective. But I think that if you take the truth, which is, or that trend, which is people are going for that. People want more privacy. They want real information. It would make sense that as a marketer, going with that river, like with that tide or whatever, that push makes more sense, right? Rather than pushing against it. Thank you for the current. And so how do you do that? How do you market in those ways? And I think I have some thoughts, but I just think that that's very different than how people market today or have marketed for a long time.
But it goes back to, I'm constantly reminded, yesterday an article came out in the Wall Street Journal. It said, Apple's move to block user tracking spawns new digital ad strategies. So no more unique identifier free to everybody to use if you're an ad creator. But it goes back to what we've talked about over and over. Don't build your platform that's 100% dependent on someone else's control.
Or on knowing everything about somebody.
Right. That's right. And so all of these app developers are up in arms. It's like, you're going to put us out of business. We're going to lose millions of dollars. Well, get creative with how to market and sell your app to people. That, again, it's lazy thinking.
It is lazy thinking. And that's kind of like, that's tough, but it ultimately is, and if you're really sitting there and not having the foresight to think, what if this is taken away? Mm-hmm. I think you always need to be going through that exercise. It's hard to see everything, but go through that exercise of what if this is taken away? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately it's unfortunate, but it's your fault. It happens to all of us though.
It's crazy times, guys. Crazy times.
So, like you said earlier, until those two are fixed, when those are fixed, it's a game changer. Mm-hmm. I don't believe those ever can be fixed. 100%, right? We can never.
There's something new to be fixed then.
No, I'm saying just, philosophically, can we ever know what's truly true? Probably not.
Not
If
100%.
not 100%, but let me, Mike, on a micro.
I'm not saying it can't get
Yeah,
better.
no. On a micro level, the deep fake videos,
Sure.
right? So
I think I saw one of you. on
yeah,
YouTube.
exactly. Like you can make a deep fake of me saying something that I never said, and people, there are people that would say Bob's a jerk, and he said it. It's real.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It is real.
And this is why I know it's real. Not only did I see it, but here's 5 other articles and authorities that say I would watch this and it's real.
Yeah, they corroborate the story.
They corroborate the story, right? Well, what if there was a mechanism that 99.9% of the world agreed on that said verified that video is real or it's fake? If we could fix that, then that could be a game. Now, to your point, there's always going to be some people, and we should think like that. All right. Can that be hacked? It's made by human beings. It's not 100% perfect, right? Or there's a workaround, or maybe, whatever. But I think we can push it forward. And I guess I probably need to correct what I said is there will never be 100% guarantee.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you. I totally agree on that. I'm saying, I think I know agree with this, but there's no source of truth, like 100% source of truth that we can all reference.
Right.
And it feels like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like, specifically social media platforms and with how they govern things, they're trying to look for that.
Right.
And to me, I'm like, I think we're looking for something that doesn't exist. I think we need to grow as human beings at some level. I think we need to help all that stuff too.
Right.
I definitely think I agree. Like, doing our best to make sure that it's not so easy to swindle people is important.
It's funny because
It
I
also
think
takes human growth.
It's the next generation. So, like my parents who are still alive and thank goodness, and they're in their 70s, and that generation, they read something on Facebook, they're like, oh, it's true. It's true. Did you see it? Did you see it on Facebook? And like, well, but you talk to a millennial and they're like, oh, 95% of everything is fake anyways. So there's nothing true, right? They'll look at that and go, it's nothing. And so it's really the perspective because of where you came from. And meaning like, I think the older generation, they came from a place where news was true. Right. And it was trusted. So when someone publishes something, there's got to be truth involved in that somewhere.
It's funny to think of the War of the Worlds, right?
Yeah.
Back in
exactly
back in the day, and I would be told that story and learn that story in history, and now you think today, and you're like, that happens like 1,000 times a day.
Exactly. It's half the YouTube videos,
and it is, and that's where, and maybe we're reiterating things, but that's where it's kind of scary how we've. Like these things that were seen as small extreme events are very large. There's a lot of volume of them happening, and we're numb to it. We're getting numb to it.
Yeah.
The fact that the younger you get in generations, the more likely they are to be like what you just said. To say, yeah, well, everything on Facebook's fake.
They're very skeptical.
That's a scary thing, right? As you get an entire generation to where they don't believe anything. And so I think as a population, we need to fix that. We need to be pursuing these things.
Yeah. And so the next generation, right, will look at all media as fake until there's something fixed. And then hopefully we'll get to the point where, like you said, 95% of everyone believes that, yes, this is truth and this is not true. This is the real, this is an imitation and this is the authentic.
Well, it happens with advertising, right? Just sent an email, I think last week, where like the best advertising is social proof, right? At least in e-commerce, and it's like very widely known, like reviews and those kind of things. But why is that? Because people don't believe what people say.
You trust people that you trust.
Well, you trust people. You think. I think maybe if you dig a level deeper, that you believe that it's like I can at least trust what someone else might say, but it's most likely that this person could be saying anything about
it. Also go ahead.
Oh, the challenge is like so you trust the majority, right? That's what you see because it's rated stars or something, right? If it's over like half, if it's majority, then I trust it. If it's in the more people that responded, I trust it more. But what happens when it's divided right in half? And there's a strong divide and there's strong voices on each side. that becomes harder then, right? The truth becomes harder to analyze. Let's say you went on to an Amazon review and you had 50-50, and literally they were very extreme. Horrible product, not what it advertised. The other people are like, the best product in the world. Who do you trust at that point?
Usually in my mind, and most people, they trust the negative.
Correct.
And they go, it can't be this bad. This has got to be fake.
Because the rest of them are
making up for it.
Fake Indian, nothing against India, but fake, responses to pump up the.
And we've all seen that
instead of why don't we think, oh, this is a great product, and someone's trying to hurt it with all these fake negative ones, right?
Yeah.
Our brain doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
No.
It's just interesting when you think of like how you extrapolate that to advertising, and we all kind of take it for granted. Like, people who trust like reviews more than they'll trust me saying it. But the fact that that's the case, and the fact that it's a train that's accelerating down that path, is kind of concerning, and definitely concerning for advertisers. Because what happens when now it happens already. We know that reviews get hacked and can be hacked by people and get faked. I mean, I've bought products on Amazon recently where they've got thousands and thousands of 5-star reviews, and then there'd be 1 or 2 reviews where it's like, all these reviews are fake. This product is horrible because of X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, that's probably not true. And I buy it, and it's like, yes, a horrible product, completely doesn't work. And so what happens when that doesn't? I feel like we need to, as a population, hopefully turn this train, but also as advertisers, like I think it's important to be aware of these things.
I think like that example, I'm sitting here thinking, well, that's an easy fix. If everyone's on the blockchain, if you in fact purchase that, and it can't be given to you, it can't be given to you as a credit. It has to be tied to your unique, whatever it is, identifier. Oh, then the review, you're allowed to give a review based on a verification of that.
Right.
You have to connect with that. So, there are ways that can be fixed and not perfect, but taken like way far down the road.
Yeah.
And I think those are just small ways that I think accuracy can be improved with some of these new crypto technologies.
And, going back to the messaging and the over pumping your product. I mean, it's hard as a marketer to come up with the right message nowadays and the right way to position the product. Because if you oversell it a little bit, it actually could work against you in a negative sense. People say, "Oh, that's not true," or it's better than, it's not as good as what it's saying it is. And so it's always that fine line, and you have to really understand. It seems like it changes every 3 years. Like you have to change. You have to understand the challenges. You have to understand the demographic, and how they think about truth. What they believe, right. and what they're cynical of. Because if you don't, you could actually over promote your product to the point where people don't believe it's true anymore. Or you could do the opposite, right? You don't promote it enough because you feel like I'm just going to kind of keep it, low key. And anyways, just some things to think about for sure. But
yeah, I think we need to change our strategies though, because rather than raising the volume, raising the volume being just like inundating people with more and more messaging, and just going more and more aggressive, and just upping the ante. I think changing the strategy, and you see people doing that. I was sort of doing some thinking here because our last episode, I was thinking last night, because our last episode was about, is Silicon Valley trying to kill Facebook? And it's really been interesting to see how it's like, I don't know, maybe the mafia or wolf packs do this, where like the one that gets, there's one that gets isolated from the pack and they all leave them and distance themselves from it, and it's on its own. And it feels like that's kind of happening in a weird way, with these companies, Google and Apple, and Google, who has obviously been making money off of data forever, saying, hey, yeah, we're going to take all the tracking away, and we're going to be for privacy and distancing themselves from Facebook. But, I asked the question last time, and I've been thinking about it, is what is the moral obligation of advertisers in a social platform like Facebook? Because we talked about how the challenges with invading someone's privacy, even if they don't know it. That's sort of a traumatic experience, and it hurts their mental state. And so what, when anxiety is high and stress is high and all this kind of stuff. So what's the advertiser's obligation, moral obligation, ethical obligation in advertising on these platforms? It's interesting as you look at that, you start to find people who, we can't tell if someone's truly authentic a lot of times without meeting them, but it starts to separate ads. Like you start to see ads that maybe connect with you. They seem, they're not trying to swindle you. They earn your trust by maybe making you laugh or you kind of can understand the character of the company. You believe in their philosophy or their approach or their purpose. And then you have the other side of it, which those ads still work, leveraging fear and those kind of tactics, they work. But I do think that strategy is kind of an old strategy.
I think for big companies, I would say, I think there's a future in ethicists, psychologists, social psychologists, moral thinkers. And you're going to see that more and more inside big companies because there is, I think in the next few years, there will be lots of studies. There'll be lots of things come out that says, there are people killing themselves. There's kids that are cutting themselves. There's human beings that are in deep depression. And media has a huge responsibility. Huge responsibility. Yeah. And that will be more accepted, and it has to be addressed. But I think as agencies, like obviously we're not going to bring in a PhD in ethics and media to be on our team staff. I mean, that would be a great thing. But I think we need to be thinking about simple things like empathy and moral obligation to the person at the other end of the screen. In psychology, there's something called the Dark Triad. And this is, psychological conditions of it. Basically, you have Machiavellianism, which is when at all costs, the ends justify the means, right? There's narcissism. I'm the most important. No one else matters. And then there's, psychopaths or psychopathy, which is I have no feelings or emotions or empathy at all. I can't, I could do the worst thing, but it doesn't affect me. And that's called the Dark Triad. So when people do horrendous things, or when they don't do what we define horrendous things, but still live that way, i.e. heads of CEOs of major corporations and other things, world leaders, et cetera. How do we apply that to our advertising and marketing? Because I know I've been guilty of going down those paths with my advertising and marketing, meaning, Machiavellianism, which is,
that seems the most common to me.
Like it doesn't matter. The ends justifies the means. Sell at all costs. When
it seems like a small thing, right?
Greed. It's greed.
Yeah,
it's greed, right?
Yeah, and honestly, it's made worse by the fact that if you don't perform, you're out.
Right.
Especially for an agency.
Yeah.
And I think we can, in the real world, we function healthily, most people, and we can recognize those weaknesses in ourselves and other people at different, obviously the spectrum is pretty wide, but we don't always apply the same thinking to a marketing strategy or an exchange or a conversion, whatever it may be, getting a lead, selling something. I think those things kind of are in the real world, but this is, all right, client's paying me X amount of dollars. My job is to get this conversion. How can I do it? And I think that's where this privacy issue is bubbling up in society. They're like, no, wait, the ends doesn't justify the means. And you can't just do whatever it takes. Fake reviews, target people with unique identifiers. You can't just use that at your will. There's got to be some sort of moral ethics around that. So
it's just too easy.
That's a big topic.
It's just too easy to not have to have ethics and morals around it.
Right.
And I think that temptation has gotten really bad. And I do think that
it's like Facebook has become the dark web. It's like or algorithms, and you're trying to it's a little crazy that you can dial in. If you think about it, like being in, in this industry for such a long time. If you told me in the 80s I could dial all this stuff in with just a couple clicks of a button and all of a sudden, man, hit these targets, you'd be like, what? Really? And, now we're able to do that. We're probably going to lose a little bit of that, but it's kind of like you can really lose a little bit of your morals when you do that, because people can do all types of crazy things to make the conversion, make the buck, and try to outsmart.
I think the worst example of this, and I know I'll step on some toes here, but I think the worst example of this recently was the QAnon source said, well, it was a great ride. We made a lot of friends, and let's move on and be good to each other. That was like Q's last post. I don't think whoever did it didn't believe a thing that they were posting for the last several years. I think it was about how can I get as many clicks and sell as many ads on these various YouTube videos that are doing. And the moral dilemma there is you've got people believing this stuff. You got people, and it's not just that, but it's we do this on the micro level, right? We can say things, and as I've had times, and I'll be honest, and as an agency owner, it's like, I don't like this product. I don't believe in it. As a matter of fact, I don't even think what we're saying is accurate. But we just push that to the back of my mind and be like, oh, it's a client. I don't have to love it. I don't have to want to use it. But we know it's not true. We know that it's manipulation. And I think we have to have those conversations, and we have to think through that as agency owners more if we're going to push forward in the next 5-10 years.
It can be really challenging. I think that one of the things that I use, so I do think it gets too easy, and the more targeting we have, I think the easier it is to slide into moral dilemmas. Yeah. So for instance, like I heard a very pronounced, I don't even know what that means, a very famous marketer say this recently, but he's like, I don't care, he was talking about politics. He's like, I'm trying to sell my product. I don't care if you voting Biden or voting Trump, but I'm going to target the Trump people on Facebook, and I'm going to say, what they want to hear, and here's my product. And I'm going to go to Biden people on Facebook and say what they want to hear, and here's my product. He's like, that's what you do. That is, that's being, if you did that in person, and we do that as marketers all the time, it's two-faced, right? And that's not that's obviously not a thing of character, and it leads to destruction. But we do that as marketers all the time. And I think we don't even do it realizing it. And I actually think that, while it's challenging from a business perspective to lose some of this data, it might be better for the souls and the character of people to lose a lot of this, because now you have to create a message that is almost universal, and all you can really go on at the end of the day is, what do I believe about my product and people? And that's how you create your message.
It's complicated, but it's also simple.
It's kind of like you got to be Coca-Cola, right? Where we just want to make the world better. We don't want to take sides. We just want to make everything happy and better and effervescent.
That's a great example, because it's funny you should say that. I was studying this past week the history of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I got sucked in with the whole New Coke debacle in the 80s. If you know anything about that, it was just like supposedly the biggest debacle.
Yeah, I was always old Coke.
Yeah, but if you dig further into it, there was things that came out of it that were positive for Coca-Cola. But then I started going down way back to the beginning of Coca-Cola and the marketing of Coca-Cola. And that's a great example of a company who went through moral dilemmas, meaning their competitor, they dominated for 10, 15 years, 20 years. No one competed with them.
Well, when you put cocaine in your drink, then
right.
You're talking about, or not the 1800s, you're talking about the 80s.
Yeah, well, even leading up to it, before Pepsi came along and was their first competitor, right? Well, Pepsi did something in the 40s that was unheard of. They did a 100% ad with a black family, and they put it in there. Well, that, as a country and as a species, we were evolving quickly as a country with with civil rights and everything. Coke said, yeah, we're not going to do that. As a matter of fact, we're going to double down and put ads of white suburbia, and we're going to say we support American values, which, okay, well, now you just did something. And so this battle went on, and then Coke evolved and changed and said, you know what, maybe we've made the wrong choice, and maybe we need to expand our thinking on this and not just, market to a certain segment of, or the majority of a majority group of our society. And so they began to evolve, and to now their advertising is more about feel good, what's best for you, what is the best experience for the human on the other end. And the last scene in Mad Men where it's the real thing. I'd like everyone's singing and holding hands of different races and colors. And I think it goes back to, it's really difficult, like you said, it's complicated. But
the Gap used to do that too.
Tell a really good story that's good for the person, and it's a human story that enhances the humanity of the other person. Yeah. That's the answer, right?
The connection is sugar water.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sugar, addictive substances.
There you go.
Yeah, but then the moral dilemma never ends, right?
No, I mean it really doesn't end. All you can do is do your best with the information that you know, and I think that if we try and keep that in mind, it takes a lot of courage, like you said earlier, an agency. Like there's sometimes you get a product, and your job is to sell it, or at least the spoken job is to sell it. And so you're like, I don't really like this myself. Like, how do I? I do think that's an interesting example, right? Because I think it takes courage, but also takes knowing what you're supposed to do. And I think in our industry, people, I think it's important to dig deep into this stuff, because the media is influencing society, and these little, sitting behind a computer screen, it's too easy to end up in a world where it's just degrading your character and you're hurting people, and it would be something that you'd never do in person if people could see you. I think it's just too easy. And so that example is interesting, because I've thought about that myself a lot of times, and I think that sometimes you have to have courage to say, this is not good, or we don't think it's good. And if we don't think it's good, people are not going to think it's good, so we better figure this out, in a selfless way.
Or how can you be an agent of change with that customer and change the script?
Absolutely. But at the same time, if you take on that type of client, I think knowing where, we don't take on, we have certain values and beliefs in this world. And so we don't take on products that violate that.
Right.
Because it's obviously we couldn't do what we do if we did that. Sometimes there are products that you don't really like. It has nothing to do with a moral dilemma. So I'm saying anything outside of that, like it's like a product that you just not sure about. I think our job is to do a really good job at being the voice that we have with our experience, meaning challenging where challenging is necessary. Using our skill set to do what we do without violating morals and character and ethics, and letting the product stand for itself. So if the product's not that good, you're doing the best to put the product on the correct pedestal, and letting it win or lose. But I think it's too easy to and this could be out of fear because you're scared of losing a client, or because you need the money, who knows what, but it's too easy to not do that and go way over and basically lie to the population through advertising. And I think that's what happens there. But what I found one antidote is, and I wonder if this would ever catch on with advertisers and marketers. I find that if you put your face behind the marketing, it's a lot harder to do things that counter what you believe.
Put your own reputation on the line.
Put your own reputation on the line. And I think as a founder, that happens more often now. But I wonder if the guy writing the ad copy in the agency, or the girl writing the ad copy in the agency, pushing that that kind of stuff, what if their face was on it? And that for good or for bad, right? Like, we all want to take credit when it's really good. I know we all have the Addies and all that kind of stuff and other award shows, and everyone's name's listed on the award. But what happens, with the other side of that, the stuff that maybe, I'm not saying it was illegal. I'm just saying that it was morally against what we believed.
Yeah.
That's why society doesn't like marketers. Like we're like one rung above a used car salesman. Is because of that reason, right?
Yeah.
Like we will take advantage of, oh yeah, our agency did that. And then the other 99 things.
Some will.
Oh, it's their fault, or we didn't do that, or
Yeah.
that we have an excuse. And it's a lack of, I think, honesty and ethics. But as you were talking about putting your face on the line, I think Brad was over there thinking about how could we connect that to the blockchain?
No, I'm just listening. Good conversations. No, you're talking about, because I used to always think, you watch these, like you said, these car dealership ads, and they're always like the owners screaming at you, come on down, 2% financing or 0% financing, all these deals. And I'm wondering, like, does that still work, or is that, but you know what? Part of it is maybe that does work on a local level because it gives somebody a face that's real versus hiding behind a brand, and so
Realtors are famous for that.
yeah, realtors. And there's some other industries that do that, and we don't have any clients that do that, so I'm not sure on the numbers, but I'm still sometimes surprised. Sometimes these guys they're not even sharp dressed. They're like, cowboy hats and big old,
The car commercials are a special kind of bad.
Yeah, they want to
They
make
really are.
they're fun, but they get your attention, and
I don't think they're intentionally bad though. Like they're a special.
yeah. And the
kind
only
of
other
bad,
industry
usually.
that does it, these late night attorneys that do these ads where they're gonna win you $5 million, and they're on screen.
Bart Durham.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would adjust that ranking, and I think those attorneys are.
Yeah, maybe depending on which
Down
ranking
there.
you read.
But I think that's also a demographic too that responds to that. I think there's certain ages that just probably just write that stuff off and go, I'm not going there, because it can actually hurt your
I
business.
mean,
too.
marketing is certainly not the only industry that suffers from this, but I do think, obviously, since we're an agency specific podcast, I think that it's one that we have the ability, like we're the small lever in what a lot of people feel and think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of power, and I think there's a lot of responsibility there. And I think it makes marketers really important, but bad. I mean, they're necessary, right?
Mhm.
Like they drive a lot of the economy.
Right.
If you didn't have the ability to market, you didn't have marketers.
Right.
People wouldn't buy products, but they can go off the wrong path. And I think it's all too easy to do that these days. You just look at, bring it home, like the effects of Facebook or social media on the population. And you think, okay, well, think of the ad dollars that are running through that. So what percentage of that problem is actually attributed directly to advertisers?
And this problem is not going away unless you think this is something minor. Yesterday, and I don't know if it lasted into today, again on March the 25th or whatever it was yesterday, 26th, the heads of the big three were in front of Congress or Senate or whatever they were doing, testifying again. So this is at the forefront of the free society. So this is not a small little thing we're talking about on this little insignificant podcast. The subject is really big. And I think as agency owners, we need to take it seriously. We need to be thinking forward on these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll have another podcast probably on, what to do when you're, all this stuff that we've talked about is going to impact the economy. We've got a lot of things in the economy that are shifting, a lot of printing of money. We can talk about that on another podcast, but how is that going to affect your business in the future and how to prepare for that, those kind of things.
Yeah, we wanted to get into the back in 2008, what happened
Next Freestyle Friday.
and what happened. Yeah. Next. So
Yeah.
we need to get into that a little bit more.
What going around? What brands do you think are hitting the spot, are doing it right? They're not extreme on either side of the things we talked about today. Like they feel legitimate. They're not trying to,
Netflix.
be greedy with their advertising. Okay, Netflix. Why?
I mean, I get an email newsletter, and then they'll every once in a while give me a
Because
notification.
they already got you, man.
Well, but
Because there's no other place to go besides Hulu.
There's lots of competition in the streaming world, but I just think that they're about let's create really good content, own it, put a lot of money into it, and that's gonna make it successful.
Yeah. What about you, Ken?
I think some of the best to look at are the ones that, in my opinion, that are not backed by capital organizations and publicly traded or not publicly traded and those kind of things, because it's hard to not let make money at all costs get to the front of that. And so private companies who are maybe a little bit smaller, maybe create products out of what maybe at one point or still a life purpose. So I'm talking about like Tony Robbins and like some of those kind of guys. I'm not saying that they're the best advertisers, but for me, I try and look at that as the thing to model. Like what's working there and how can you model those type of things? Because I think it's most likely to be seen as authentic.
Ken, you and I have been saying for a while, see your agency as a production company, as a media company.
Yeah.
As I sit here and think, and you ask the question, who is doing it? The unique thing that all the companies that I can think of, and I know that there's some retail and even packaged goods company that do it well, but the ones that I immediately go to are the ones that have control of the story that they create. So, the podcast industry, what we're doing, even book publishing, and talk about streaming services. It's about really telling really good and creating really good stories. And because that can't be affected necessarily by all this other stuff. Like if Facebook turns you off, if TikTok goes away, if Google ads don't work anymore, I can still write good stories. I can still record good things. I can still create
I can
films.
pass out tapes.
Yeah.
I think,
and that will be viral.
and that's an important thing is like, think of yourself, we say this all the time, right? But think of yourself as whatever it is, like a storyteller, not a YouTuber or a Facebook marketer. Like you're not the channel, you're because if you do that, the channel shuts you down and you're theoretically done, but obviously you're not. So don't think about yourself by that and shuttle yourself back a little bit. You know who does that well also is, I know you're a fan of him, I think, Bob, and I am too. Russell Brunson, like privately owned, company. He's actually got, I guess similar beliefs as us, but obviously a high character moral, and he's a marketer, which is like, any market's hard, but it's all story based. It's all purpose driven and authentic, and he also makes a lot of money doing it. So it's successful from a capitalism perspective. It seems successful from a character perspective. Seems authentic. Those are the type of. I think those are the type of, and as you shuttle that to companies, I think you see companies starting to do that with their advertising. More founder faces, more stories about why they started, more, and that may seem like low impact marketing, but I think that those are seeds that are planted in like the emotions of people that listen to them, that then have the ability to grow into something. It's more slow burn marketing, I think, when you take that approach. But I think that's kind of where we're going.
Going back to the companies, I like companies that don't have to actually market much.
Right.
Like Tesla. When's the last time you saw a Tesla ad?
Exactly.
Like those are the ones that you can sit all day long. If you actually count the amount of car ads on TV or other type of platforms,
right,
they're unbelievable. You don't see a Tesla ad. What does that tell you? You know what I mean? Like
they're not targeting.
Well, they're not needing to. They're not, like, the product itself is doing the best job. So I think that's the key for me, is that if you're all message and no meat into the actual product, you can't sustain that long, because people will call you out. You have to be more meat. You have to actually have a product. Apple does, I think, a really good balance. Like you see good Apple ads, at the same time you believe that their product is that. So it's not false advertising to you, right? After a while, you believe it, because it's like, okay, they proved it in the past. They're going to prove it on the next one, on the next product. And so I think it's just a matter of don't over promote right? And make sure your product is the best, something you can stand behind. And,
Right.
the same thing, Bob, you mentioned that, there's products that you in the past that you haven't really believed in, but you have to market it. Well, that's a challenge. If you're a marketing company and you're feeling that, well, the consumer is going to feel that
Yes.
too. And so that might be a red flag that you have to change the way you want to maybe change the product, or what the product means. But anyways, just going back to that note.
That's good. Good discussion, guys. And if you have not checked out our YouTube channel, go and
see Brad's new glasses.
Yeah, search Agency Explodes.
Another company I really enjoy is Warby Parker. These are Warby Parker.
Oh, they look great.
I love their.
Good job.
Yeah, they just.
Yeah, Warby, let us.
Yeah.
We'll run some ads for you.
Yeah.
Just search Agency Exposed podcast and it'll come up. We also have, obviously, we love your reviews and your ratings and all that good stuff. So don't forget to do that. Anything else?
No, it's great.
All right.
All right. Until next time.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.